Okay. I can see there's people still logging in, which is really good. But I'll to make sure we keep within an hour. I'll get started. And to be fair, the first bit is a bit of housekeeping, and we've got an agenda anyway, so we can hopefully people will log in by the time we get to the end of that. Okay. So firstly, welcome and thank you for attending the today's webinar, which is going to talk about how we can use data to enhance asset and risk strategies through collaboration. So, as I said, we've got before we begin, we've got a little bit of housekeeping. So the first things are that you will get a recording of this webinar, so you'll be able to reuse it and look over the kind of the speeches that are being presented. So don't worry about having to take notes frantically and write stuff down. Please, which a couple of you have done already, please submit any questions that you've got or any points that you want to make. It's always good to kind of hear what your thoughts are during the presentation. So if you've got anything, let us know. There will be time at the end for a short Q&A session. So if there's anything that comes up, we are going to save the questions till the end of the session. So if anything comes up during one of the presenters' talks, let us know and we can go through that. And then finally, when you leave, I will send out a exit questionnaire, which kind of looks at how you found the webinar, but also if you want any more information from any of the presenters or you want data samples or anything like that, that's an opportunity for you to let us know kind of what you want more of. So I'll just introduce the presenters, and I think they will introduce themselves properly when they get into the demonstrations, into the presentations. But I'm Ian Usher. I'm a business development manager at ODC GIS, and I look after numerous of our housing association clients. We've got Kate from Blue Sky, and she's the sales account manager. There's Robert from Ordnance Survey, and he's a senior technical relationship manager. We've got Steve from Map Impact as a chief commercial officer. And then we've got Mark Frost from Twin by Heskonian, and he's a senior sales lead. And they're all going to be talking about the data that they provide that can help housing associations. So the agenda is, I've just got a slide just to talk about who ODC GIS are. So I know that looking at the attendee list, some of you are existing clients, which is great, but there's quite a few of you that are new. So I just want to give you a brief introduction as to who we are. I'm going to then just have a single slide that talks about kind of how we look at data-driven resilience before passing over to the presenters. Once they've finished, we'll go over the key benefits of detailed data. We'll talk about possible next steps, and then, like I say, there's an opportunity for questions at the end as well. So just a little bit on ODC GIS. So we've been working with local authorities and housing associations for over 30 years. We've currently got, that number's changed in the last couple of days. So we've currently got 69 social housing providers that we provide a GIS managed service to, and that's responsibility for over 1 million properties, which is about 22% of the overall UK social housing stock. I suppose they all use GIS for similar things, but the good thing is that we've got clients that vary in size, so they're all using it for the same reasons, regardless of the size they are. So we've got St Anne's Housing, which is 93 properties, and we've got a customer, Clarion, which is 100,000 properties, but they're all using GIS and data to analyse kind of their assets and the land information that they own. We are a one-stop shop for GIS services in housing, so we provide GIS managed service. We also provide data, which is why we're here today to talk about the data that our partners can provide. But we also look at kind of a data capture service around grounds maintenance, and we can also provide kind of consultancy on an ad hoc basis as and when required. And like I said, we are partners with the guys that are going to present today, but we also partner with the likes of GIS Cloud, XMAP and Esri, who all provide GIS software as well. So just to talk about data-driven resilience before I pass over to the first presenter. So data-driven resilience is a proactive approach to asset and community management. So instead of simply reacting to challenges as they arise, we can use intelligence and insights from diverse data sources such as the data providers that we are hearing from today, to anticipate and mitigate potential risks before they impact your communities or assets. So this strategic approach ensures your organisation can adapt and thrive in the face of change, leading to long-term sustainability and stronger, more secure outcomes for your residents. So by bringing together spatial data with geographical information systems, you can revolutionize management and decision-making processes within the social housing sector. By connecting disparate data sets to a common geographic location, such as an asset, you can visualize complex information in a simple, intuitive way, allowing you to identify crucial patterns, understand dependencies, and unlock new insights, leading to a more efficient outcome across your portfolio. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass over to Kate from Blue Sky, who is going to share her presentation first. So just give me a second. So you should have control now, Kate.
Let me just test that.
I think it might be a little bit of a lag. Yeah, perfect.
Great. Thank you, Ian. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kate Bassett and I'm a sales account manager here at Blue Sky, and it's a pleasure to be with you all this morning. First of all, just want to have a quick look at what Blue Sky do and give you an overview. So Blue Sky is the UK and Ireland's leading commercial aerial survey company. We've been capturing and analysing airborne data since 2003, creating a range of high resolution data products at national scale across UK and Republic of Ireland. Blue Sky supply aerial imagery and height data to the UK government as part of the APGB contract. And in May this year, we were acquired by Woolpert, a global architecture, engineering and geospatial firm. Woolpert's backing strengthens Blue Sky's ability to invest in innovation, expand our data offerings and scale our services. It's a great strategic fit as Blue Sky brings deep UK and Ireland expertise, while Woolpert offers global reach and technical leadership. We work across many sectors, from government to utilities to insurers, providing aerial photography, LiDAR, oblique imagery and more to enable their business to link location-based information directly to business critical decision making. So this slide is just having a look at the product and services we offer. I won't have time to go through all of them today, but today I'd like to focus on our aerial photography, our photometric height data and our vegetation data sets. So starting with aerial photography, it's at the heart of what we do at Blue Sky. It's our bread and butter, really. We capture all of Great Britain at a minimum resolution of 12.5 centimetres. In simple terms, that means that each pixel represents 12.5 centimetres on the ground. Blue Sky's imagery is captured using fixed-wing aircrafts, like the one in the picture here, sitting perfectly between drones and satellite, which facilitates both wide area capture and higher resolution imagery. In the UK, we lease multiple aircrafts that are strategically based at Birmingham Airport for quick deployment. But it isn't just about the high resolution, it's about the accuracy as well. And all of our 12.5 centimetre aerial photography goes through a process called true ortho rectification. This process removes the distortion caused from the camera lens and the curvature of the Earth, ensuring the imagery is perfectly aligned with the real world landscape. And we achieve this by collecting precise ground points all over Great Britain. Historically, we captured on a 3-year cycle. We are now working hard to increase this to every 2 years, and this currency is unmatched by any other UK supplier. Plus, I must mention, we have 5 centimetre aerial imagery for urban areas, which we are committed to expanding, and we've captured over 2,000 square kilometres of new 5 centimetre imagery this flying season. There we go. Just a quick look at a case study of our imagery here. So this is with Derby Homes, and it's a great case study on how they were using our imagery to fight against climate change. So Derby Homes is using Blue Sky's aerial photography to identify suitable roof coverings for integrated solar PV systems across their housing stock. The project assessed more than 8,000 addresses to consider size, pitch, aspect, existing furniture and any infringing vegetation. Using its high-resolution imagery, Blue Sky was able to determine the suitability of each property, measure the number of solar panels the address could accommodate and calculate potential outputs so Derby Homes could install solar PVs on initial batch of trial properties. Oh, I think I might go one too far there. Sorry, there we go. Quick look at our photogrammetric height data. So in case you aren't familiar, digital surface model, the DSM represents the first surface. So I like to think of that as if you were dropping a big sheet over everything you see and it falls on buildings, roofs, trees and vegetation. That's what the DSM captures. It's the full built and natural environment. And then if you were to remove those ground features, what remains is the digital terrain model. So that's the Earth surface, which shows the true ground level. So free from buildings, and trees, and any other obstructions. Both of these data sets are created using our high aerial photography, which means you get highly accurate, detailed information on buildings and the land that they sit on. So for housing associations, this data is particularly powerful as it can help with assessing building heights and roof shapes for solar potential, just like we saw with the Derby Homes case study. Also understanding roof aspect and orientation, so vital for renewable energy planning or maintenance programs. Planning and state improvements such as the drainage, access routes and landscaping. The DTM is available at 5 metre intervals, while the DSM is captured at a finer 25 centimetre resolution, giving you the detail you need for both strategic planning and on-the-ground asset management. So just to summarise, Blue Sky height data provides housing associations with actionable insight to support better decision-making around asset management, sustainability and community development. So moving on now to our vegetation data set. So a lot of you on this call might be already familiar with our national tree map, or what we call NTM. NTM is the most detailed national tree data set ever produced, covering England, Wales, Scotland and the Republic of Ireland. It provides precise information on the location, height and the canopy extents of all trees 3 metres or higher. The dataset is built from our high-resolution aerial photography, our terrain and surface data, which we've just looked at, and our colour infrared imagery, processed using innovative techniques to deliver accuracy and detail at scale. So for housing associations, this data has direct practical applications such as estate management, so identifying trees close to buildings, boundaries or infrastructure, risk assessment, so supporting compliance and safety checks around tree height, spread and potential impact on residents or assets, maintenance planning, so prioritising tree works, monitoring growth and planning for long-term management, plus environmental and sustainability goals, so measuring canopy cover across estates, supporting biodiversity initiatives and contributing to green space planning. NTM is already being used by insurers, utilities, local authorities and planners, and NTM provides housing associations with a powerful tool to better manage their assets, reduce risk and enhance the living environment for residents. I do have a case study here that I'd like to talk through briefly. This is with Wessex Water, who serves 2.9 million customers across the southwest. Their challenge was that after the 2024 National Tree Safety Guidance, Wessex Water needed a clear policy for managing trees on its land, particularly near high-use zones such as railways, roads, schools and public areas. Existing data wasn't accurate or objective enough to meet the strict safety requirements, so the solution was, by using Blue Sky's National Tree Map data, Wessex Water built a dashboard mapping trees across their land, split into 3 use zones. So this allowed them to quickly identify high priority trees and focus resources where risks are greatest. So the result was, by combining NTM data, so the tree height, location and canopy extent, with their land use zones, Wessex Water gained a full picture of potential risks. This targeted approach saved time, reduced costs and ensures survey efforts focus on the highest risk areas. So early last year, we launched the National Hedgerow Map, or NHM for short, and it's the only hedgerow map available that can accurately measure the volume of a hedge and therefore the carbon captured. Historically, hedgerow maps have not offered the volumetric measurement, but the polygons within the NHM enable this, in addition to providing length and height attributes. Created from our high resolution aerial photography, our terrain and surface data and colour infrared imagery, using innovative processing techniques, NHM is an ideal tool to support initiatives happening nationally to create new hedgerows and, more importantly, restore the existing ones. NHM means you can accurately assess where current gaps are, all from your desktop, informing reparation projects. NHN can be used for various applications, including hedgerow monitoring and management, hedgerow restoration projects, habitat monitoring and analysis, and much more. So innovation is in our DNA at Blue Sky, and we don't only provide information as to what is there, but also why it matters. And I wanted to briefly talk to you about our new change detection product, which is a spatial intelligent product that reveals how and where our landscape is changing. So from tree loss to new hard standing to shift in vegetation health. Built from Blue Sky's exclusive aerial imagery and NTM data, the change detection product shows green to grey change plus canopy change, which is perfect for use in planning, drainage and flooding analysis plus urban greening. And we're also looking to continue to innovate in other areas. We're working with the University of Leicester on a knowledge transfer partnership with an aim to identify species using our aerial imagery, NTM data and AI. Plus, we're always looking to improve our data sets, such as looking at better processes for segmentation and delineation of our NTM. Plus, I can share with you something hot off the press. We're looking to launch an NTM Plus and an NTM Risk. So NTM Plus adds contextual intelligence, which means the data not only shows where the tree is, but also the environmental and land use context it sits in. And the NTM Risk adds hazard and impact intelligence, which shows how trees interact with people, property and infrastructure, helping clients manage liability and resilience. So I just want to finish on our GeoStream service, which is our subscription service. This is a great way to access the data you need instantly. We have two sort of flavors of GeoStream. There's GeoStream Viewer, which is a web-based application for visualizing our data, which is ideally for non-GIS users. And then we have GeoStream Direct, which feeds the data you need directly into your own GIS environment via API. Via GeoStream Direct, you can get access to our 12.5 national imagery plus our 5 centimetre urban imagery, our national tree map, our photogrammetric DSM and DTM. And the key benefits is one central data source for company-wide use, no local storage needed, and the feeds, the APIs are continuously refreshed, so you always get the most up-to-date data. That's it from me, Ian. Thank you. I'll hand it back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Kate. That's really good. Thank you for going through that. There's lots of different data sets available, which is great. So just to touch on, I've got one of these after each partner, but just to go on kind of provide an example of kind of where we've helped organisations. So CHP invested in National Tree Map to better understand the risk to their assets from trees. So the goal was to identify not just the trees on their land, but also trees on neighbouring properties that could impact their own assets. So the managed service team conducted a spatial analysis that created two distinct layers which then went into their Esri system. So the layers were trees within 20 metres of CHP assets, and then trees overhanging CHP land registry boundaries, so they could see where the neighbouring trees were. So in addition to the maps, they also received a detailed spreadsheet listing each asset at risk. And the information allowed CHP to be proactive in managing the risk of trees falling or being uprooted due to extreme weather. And by identifying potential hazards in advance, they've mitigated it against damage to their assets and prevented service disruption as well. Okay, so with that, what I'm going to do now is I'm now going to pass it over to Robert Wingfield, who's going to talk about the Ordnance Survey data that they can provide. So just give me a second, Robert. You should now have control.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you very much, Ian. Yeah, I can see that. That's fantastic. And good morning, everyone. And great to be here with you. So I'm going to talk through a little bit about how OS data can support yourselves as housing associations. I'm also joined on with Gemma Jack, who's one of our pilot sales executives, and I'm more than happy to take any questions as well. So yeah, to introduce myself, I'm Robert Wingfield. I'm a senior geospatial consultant. I've been at OS for about 6 years, very much supporting across a wide variety of sectors, and really keen to showcase today how the OS National Geographic Database, our next generation of data and analytical data, can really look to support on some of these cases. So if we move forwards. There we go. Just thinking about how location data can really help us really understand the world. And this is really some sort of key principles, just really make clear about the value of geospatial and the value of OS data in supporting this. And that's very much around Ordnance Survey data being authoritative and trusted. You'll be using data that's created by ourselves at OS, but also through custodians, for example, local authorities, when it comes to address information, for example, utilising highly accurate, right down to centimetre level accuracy, and it's known for being reliable, but also known for being high quality because it's processed using really key data principles and standards, but then critically a golden thread of multiple sources of information together. So it's that interoperability of different data sets coming together to really support on use cases. And that could be something around identifying hard to heat homes. You need to understand address information, building height data, the wealth of attribution behind building information, as well as the context of that building to really understand and target appropriate mitigation measures around a home that might be hard to heat, for example. So that's where Ordnance Survey data and location data in particular can really come in really handy to support those use cases. And the way that kind of is very much moving forwards is through, if my slides move forwards, let's see. There we go, is all around transforming OS data for analysis, and it's really around understanding how Ordnance Survey data can be utilised to support your analytics rather than just having a map. Actually, what's the intelligence that's coming from that can inform your business decisions in a better way and a more efficient way. And the way that we are doing that is we are transforming our data for analysis through these four key things on the screen here. We're increasing our data update frequency, very much looking at increase that from monthly through to some of the data we now release up to daily, for example. It doesn't mean you have to take data daily, etc., but we are very much increasing that frequency, very much supporting that move forwards in that direction, as to ensure that you're getting the best insight from the data and really speeding up some of those workflows that we have to support your analysis. We're also providing richer attribution, and I'll come on to that a little bit in a moment about how you can utilise different parts of Ordnance Survey data to really support on your use cases. We're also looking very much forward to the future. The data that we've released in the last couple of years in particular support some of your key use cases, whether that's around understanding housing stock, understanding where, for example, you could put solar panels, for example, on homes. What's the data that's needed, the analytical data to understand that, to take that a step further. So it's moving away from just that cartographic sort of visual view of a map, but actually taking that a step further, be able to retain that map view and providing some analytics over the top of that map to then support decision making. And the final point on there is around more discoverable data. We're making it easier to link different data sets together, support what you're looking to do for those use cases. And ultimately, those four key points I mentioned on the screen there, as well as those principles I mentioned just a moment ago, transforming OS data for analysis moving forwards into the future. And that very much creates what we call the OS National Geographic Database, which is very much an evolution of our data. We released the OS NGD, OS National Geographic Database, about 3 years ago in 2022. And this is very much the authoritative data that describes the geography of Great Britain. So it's full national coverage, large scale, granular data describing the geography of Great Britain. And whilst it's very visual, as you can see on the screen here, it is very much a route into these themes and collections of data, as you can see, but it's underpinned by a wealth of analytical attribution about every address, about every building, for example. And this is where you can really start to bring in the power of the data, bringing together other sources of data and from your own data sources as well, to really make this make some really good decisions from that. And to show an example of that, let's say you then took some address data, you've got the UPRN as that unique identifier linking addresses together, linking that to buildings information, understanding what UPRNs are contained within what buildings, understanding the attribution behind that building, understanding the height, understanding whether it's got a basement, understanding whether it's got a green roof or solar panels, for example, the roof aspect, whatever it might be, linking that to land use and the economic activity taking place on that area of land, the function of that area of land, understanding access points to that land use site as well, and then bringing together the land cover data, so that's the green one on the left-hand side, to understand the biological surface of the area of land. And already we're starting to link address, buildings, land use and land, understand that housing stock, understanding the context of what's going on, but then taking that a step further and understanding what's the proximity to a water course, looking at the water features and the water network, understanding the proximity to the transport network and how does the transport network relate to the address, linking identifiers, linking the unique property reference number to the unique street reference number, for example, and linking that together, and then bringing in things like structures, which are things like bridges, for example, and then other parts of the NGD like geographical names. So just a couple of moments there, I've started to link together and built a story around all these different data themes you can see on here. It's analytical data describing the geography of Great Britain. Then further to that is being able to analyse that from there, bringing in a cartographic view as well, being able to visualize it on a map, which is also always really important, but then bringing in other data sets as well to really enhance that interoperability and really solve some of those key business challenges that you have. So if we take that a step further then and go into a little bit of detail on that, if we then think about it from an address perspective, the way that we have built our NGD address product is that we've built that by life cycle. So you can understand the life cycle of an address, moving from a pre-build address, which those blue dots in the middle of the screen there in that construction site, right through to a built address, and then to a historic address as well. So it's split by a life cycle, making it much easier to understand where are those live addresses, being able to link that to buildings information and understanding that proximity of what's going on that surrounding area. And the fact that the address point is located within the building enables that easy cross-reference and that easy identification of your assets. So it's understanding and that sort of view there. If you're wondering where this map is, by the way, because I get this question asked a lot, that's Pinhoe in Exeter. Lots of housing development going on there. It's a really interesting part of the country. But I should also point out in our address data, we also have street addresses as non-addressable objects. So non-addressable objects are things that you can't deliver post to, but still have a UPRN captured. So things like post boxes, telephone boxes, advertising boards, and sometimes ponds. Good luck sending post to a pond, might get a bit soggy. So you can really start to bring address data to life in that way. But then I think the value really comes in the NGD when linking this data to buildings and the wealth of building attribution that we now hold within the OSNGD. And this data really comes through on this slide here, and you can start to understand the wealth of data that we have been capturing. This includes, I'll just touch on a few of these: building age, construction material, and basement presence. So where the building contains an address, we have captured those attributes. And that brings a really good insight in understanding, okay, what about if you're trying to identify hard to heat homes? What are you trying to identify sort of the nature of your housing stock in that situation? Understanding that site analysis, what's going on in the area, understanding correlations in your housing stock. Are there a number of properties with a basement? What information can you tell from that building age, for example? But also further to that, understanding the roof information, things like roof shape, roof aspect, roof material, which can give really good idea, and you can run some calculations on whether solar panels are present. Because if you know that your roof aspect is predominantly in a southerly direction on your assets, then you know actually what's the potential there for solar panels. And we also have information on where a building does contain a solar panel already as well. So you can start to really pull together some of this data and start to create some understand some analysis on doing that solar panel suitability on housing stock, for example. We'd also link together address count, understanding the number of addresses contained within a building, understanding that wider contextual view and linking to site data, and understanding the height data and the number of floors contained within that building as well. So it's very much a wealth of attribution contained on the building, being able to cross-reference that and link it together to then embed within your analysis to then support on your decision making. And then I suppose taking that a step further now and kind of summarizing where we've got to there, that ability to link different data sets together is really important. You might want to do that in the context of something like flood risk, or there might be something else you're looking at in terms of correlation or understanding of linking different data sets together within the OSNGD, but also you might hold locally as well. And this kind of diagram here starts to showcase that in a bit more detail. We can go from the top left-hand corner in box number 1, where you've got a postcode area, and you then got those points of those addresses, but you're not really sure, you haven't got that intelligence of the building information or the land use sites data to understand what's going on beyond the UPRN and understanding whether that UPRN is contained within a flood risk or not, for example. But actually, you can then take that a step further, understanding the life cycle of that address, of that UPRN, understanding whether it's a pre-built address, understanding whether it's residential, whether it's commercial, and looking at that in relation to that risk area that you might hold. Being able to understand and make decisions from that is really important in box 2 there. But going from box 2 to box 3, you can then take that a step further by doing that cross-reference, as I mentioned earlier, to the building and understanding the wealth of data that comes through on the building, understanding whether it has a basement, that's going to be of a higher risk, understanding, for example, whether it has a thatched roof, for example, and the intelligence you can then create from that, but also further to that, understanding the number of the height data, the number of floors and that attribution I just talked through to really build out a really strong analytical picture of your housing stock. And then in that box 4 in the bottom right hand corner there, understanding that land use site. And what I'm really talking about there is that function of the area of land and providing that geometry to state the area of land that we're talking about to really bring together and understand what about the land cover information, what are the other data sets you can start to put out to provide that wider contextual view around that particular building and around that particular address. So this just shows that how you can start to link just within the NGD in itself, then you can then broaden that wider and overlay onto a map view or embed into your database to really create some really good intelligence as to what's going on within your housing stock and to take that further. And then the final point I just wanted to mention is around our documentation platform. And it's all very well and fun talking about documentation, but there's a reason why. And that's because on our documentation platform, we have some wonderful story maps. So you can access through the QR code and on the docs.os.uk URL at the top of the page there, because we have some great story maps on our More Than Maps part of our documentation, which goes through how you can use OSNGD data to support on things like understanding solar suitability on buildings, understanding risk, understanding access to green space, understanding how you can use OSNGD data to support in identifying hard to heat homes, for example. So we've got a wealth of tutorials and a wealth of articles to explore how OSNGD data can support your business requirements. So I will finish there and I'll hand back over to Ian, but happy to take any questions later on in the webinar. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Robert. That's really good. There's lots of really useful data sets that are going to help you, that are going to help organisations understand their assets better. So that's really good. Thank you for that overview. I did, and Robert touched on it as well. I did mean to say after Kate's presentation, but feel free to use the chat to ask questions for both presentations so far. And then, like I say, if we've got time at the end, we'll try and answer them. If not, we'll have to answer them through the feedback forms. But again, just to kind of summarise from a client point of view that we already work with. So Magenta knew that a property's age and construction materials are strong indicators of its energy performance. So older buildings, often with less insulation, are typically less energy efficient, more expensive to heat. And they used the Ordnance Survey NGD data because it held all the information that Magenta needed. So ODC created a new data layer that easily identified the wall construction and the age of the building for all of the Magenta properties. And we also provided a detailed spreadsheet that listed all the properties with its specific construction material and age and provided it to them. And then this information allowed Magenta to identify hard to heat homes, which is something Robert touched on in his presentation, which is good, and proactively allows them to prioritise retrofitting projects. So by targeting improvements like new insulation or upgraded heating systems, they've been able to reduce carbon emissions, they've been able to lower energy bills for residents, and they've been able to comply with sustainability regulations as well. Okay. So next, I'm going to hand over to Steve, who is going to talk about a selection of Map Impact data. So I'm just going to give you control. Excellent. There you go, Steve. You should have it.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I'm Steve Keir-Hain, Chief Commercial Officer at Map Impact. I'm just going to spend the next 10 minutes taking a very quick overview on our our products. Whoops, why have I come out of that?
You all right? Yeah, there you go. Give control.
I just want the next slide, Ian. Can you
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay. Somehow I've lost control of the order of that. So we're a relatively new business, founded in 2023. We've got a few different hubs, Bristol, London, Glasgow. We've got a mix of sort of spatial data, ecological expertise, and also uniquely, perhaps for the type of business, quite a lot of finance and financial services. On the right there, that's some of the organisations that we've been working with, and a mix there, local authorities. We've got some commercial customers there, conveyancing businesses that produce environmental search reports. But I'll give you a flavour of the products that we are now actually taking into the marketplace. So, Ian,
yeah,
I'm looking to you to.
That's fine.
Brilliant. So this is how we put our solutions to the market. We take inputs, so we use a lot of satellite imagery to get the sufficiently granular resolution, and we combine that with what we call ground truthing. So we put those things together, those two elements, and we also apply a lot of what we would say are bespoke analytics. We use a lot of AI combined with machine learning to come out with the sort of optimum indices that we can infer sort of logic from. We create nationwide data sets. That is sort of some of the method is patented. It's going through patent application, but it's consistent. So from one end of the country to the other, the method is entirely consistent at 50-meter resolution. So that is quite unique at the moment in terms of that level of sort of resolution. And then obviously we provide data as a service. So Ian, please. We've got 4 foundation products. The unique edge is that our first one, Biodiversity View, is an assessment of land cover and habitat condition right across the nation at 50-meter intervals. Heat View is high resolution for heat stress, so susceptibility to heat stress. Drought View being susceptibility to water stress and drought risk. And Wildfire View, as it speaks for itself, is about wildfire susceptibility at locational level. Ian. If I firstly talk about Biodiversity View, so we do away with that slide. We've got national coverage, as I said before. Importantly, the outputs that we have align to the DEFRA metric calculator, so they are produced to be enshrined as part of that legislative process. We talk about regional context, so we use that to benchmark one area against another within its region, but we can then drill down to specific sites, which obviously gives you that sort of granular sort of view of that. Thanks, Ian. In terms of reporting, we can produce the data onto dashboards, into discrete reports, pretty flexible really, and we sort of work with platform providers, software providers, or we can produce static PDF reports if the demand so requests those. Thanks, Ian. Looking at Wildfire View, so again, a national data set. We run this on a 3-year rolling temporal window. That's because if you get an outlier year, it's in sort of not the right thing just to focus on 1 year in isolation. So we do it on a continued 3-year rolling window. 15 different features following sort of thematic groups there. So in the case of wildfire, it varies from understanding, what the landscape is, the meteorological conditions, right the way down to understanding areas of interest where people gather. Most of the wildfires in the UK are actually down to human involvement, intervention. So part of our data sort of looks at where wildfires occur, where they might occur, because there are car parks, lay-bys, walks, mountain biking, camping, that sort of thing. Main sources, lots of satellite-based imagery there and indices from that, again underscored by our biodiversity view. It's our understanding of land cover and the condition that it's in or not in, which is a major contribution to wildfire risk. Ian. Won't go over this in detail, but there's a definition there of what is a wildfire, how we ascribe that. Lots of incidents of this year in the UK, record year. We now have a wildfire season. So on the low score, we're talking here about a very low likelihood of a wildfire in a certain area, going right the way through to a high score, where the likelihood is elevated and the potential for severity is substantial. In the past, we didn't worry so much about wildfire, but it's now a major concern, and we're seeing regulators like the Prudential Regulation Authority telling insurers and banks that they need to now sort of manage this risk and understand it and assess it going forward. In terms of drought view, again, the same sort of approach to that, a 3-year temporal window, very specific thematic groups here. So again, looking at things like land surface temperature, precipitation is obviously extremely important here, but also the vegetation, soil conditions, land management and condition again plays a very important part here. Also drought severity, vegetation health indices. The whole thing around water stress here is important. What happens when the supply of water in rivers, etc., starts to go low? What impact does that have? We're expecting to see, again, some record claims going forward this autumn into winter on subsidence because of the clay shrink swell background. Sources, again, a lot of satellite-based imagery here, but then also understanding soil condition, so data sources from that, and again underpinned by our biodiversity view product. Same sort of approach here, from low going up to very high. In particular, we speak to physical climate change risk here because this is a major concern. It's about degrading asset value. That's obviously of concern to lenders against these assets or insurers against the assets. And so this understanding of forward looking as well. So all of these data sets are actually measured with RCPs that look ahead at 5, 30 and 50-year forward projections here. Ian, please. Heat view. So this is the final one of our 4. Again, the 3-year rolling sort of window. This one's an interesting one because I think it very much plays to housing associations. So if we look at the thematic group here, you can see from this, it's land surface temperature, which is important. The thing about heat stresses, though, we're also able to capture nighttime temperature. And when we're talking about things like urban heat island effect, it's that locked in temperature, especially at nighttime, that causes real problems for people who have underlying respiratory illnesses or health conditions. That temperature is really dangerous. Resolution Foundation this year talks about 1 million children in inner London or in London area being at risk from heat. Some urban properties this year were uninhabitable for months of the summer season. We had 4 extreme heat events in 2025, a record year. What we also, though, here build into consideration is where there is green areas that mitigate. There's a huge cooling factor from greening. Again, main sources, so satellite imagery here, day-nighttime imagery series, we're picking up all of these sort of understanding of how bad the locked-in nighttime temperature is in addition to the daytime temperature. And again, understanding the land cover. Inner cities where it's all concrete, that acts like a sponge in terms of trapping in and storing heat. Thank you, Ian. Again, our scoring for heat view. Importantly here, we're trying to think, well, it's a nice summer, it's just very hot, it's very pleasant. Actually, year on year, it degrades property as well. A lot of the building fabrics here are not built with or to be conditioned to these extreme temperatures. So that is of concern again to insurers, to lenders, and it should be to housing associations as well, especially where there are vulnerable residents. Thanks, Ian. So our case study on that for heat stress was Liv. They were the first user of our heat view outputs. So on this, we took a sort of an assessment of their whole housing stock. This was over a year ago now. They wanted it done by neighbourhood area into ward level, although they've got the underlying data per sort of building type. So they wanted a RAG output as well, which is how we delivered it. We can deliver the outputs in a variety of ways. It can be done on a CSV, which is what the financial services companies want, or it can be highly visual onto a dashboard, which I think is how ODC will be planning on using a lot of this going forward. Thanks, Ian. So if we look at that, that's a sample of Liv's housing stock. And you just see some of the differences. So the property on the right is fairly typical of a block of flats there, residents, where it's backed onto a road. There's very little greening, as opposed to the one on the left, where there is a certain amount of communal area around that. And what Liv were able to do here was to enhance that sort of greening area there to maximise the mitigation effect and to start to plan in areas on properties like the right. And in fact, what they ended up doing was using our data to prioritise in terms of retrofit the ones who actually came out with the red scores. And that financially had made a very big difference. So Ian, thanks.
Yep.
That was the value proposition. So they expected to see 100 times return on investment, purely because it was enabled Liv to actually say, out of our retrofit budget that we plan for the next 5-10 years, we can prioritize the very specific properties where we know the area or the property is most vulnerable to this heat stress. So it enabled them to make a more informed decision on their immediate spend and to planning the finance for that. Thanks, Ian. Why should you use the data? I won't go through it all, but there's a I would say here, resilience, resident safety. You're protecting against some extreme conditions now. These climate perils are very real. They're here now. We can start thinking about 15 years out, but if we carry on having record summers like we've just had, it's very much here and now. Regulatory, I believe that the social housing regulator is paying attention to this type of data. They're producing yet another sort of score in terms of community. So it's what you're going to be doing to your residents will be of concern. The whole thing then around insurance and managing the asset, investment planning, very crucial. Community, if you can do more in terms of greening, we know that it's an association with mental health, and it's about doing good in terms of stewardship. Differentiation and reputations, you want to be ahead of the game, I would say. In terms of housing associations, you want a good reputation that you do good for your residents and you maintain your sort of asset stock. Thank you.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thanks, Steve. That's really good. A lot of it, again, a lot of data sets that kind of look at how you can identify risk within assets. That's a really good run through. Thank you. So again, just to kind of summarise from a ODC GIS perspective. So Fairhive invested in the heat risk data. They want to identify all the properties that were at risk from heat and overheating in the future. Their goal was to proactively plan a retrofit program, focusing on the properties that they need to invest in. So say they use the heat view data along with land registry. ODC provided them with the spatial analysis layers that they placed onto the GIS, as well as kind of a CSV file that showed them where the properties were in a tabular format. And then Fairhive have used that to strategically plan and prioritise retrofit efforts, ensuring that they focus resources on the properties where they have the greatest impact. So this proactive approach helps them to prepare for future climate change challenges and improve living conditions for their residents as well. Okay, so again, feel free to ask questions, drop questions in for Steve if you've got any. And what I'll do now is I'll pass you over to Mark for the last presentation. So I'm just giving you control, Mark.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, morning,
Hi.
everyone. Let me just see if that's gonna. You might need to stay on standby to be able to do it for me. So as Ian said, I'm Mark Frost. I work at Twin by Haskoning. I'm just going to take a conscious of time, so I'll try and sort of get it done so there's enough time for a few questions at the end. But I'm just going to give you a quick brief overview today of the data sets that we have, and yeah, just a little bit of background of sort of who we are. So yeah, it doesn't so far. It's not. Oh, maybe it is.
Yeah, there might be a bit of a lag.
Right. Well, hopefully it stays on that slide. Yeah. So just a bit of background about who we are. So Twin is a brand within the business Haskoning. Haskoning is a sort of long-established, traditionally consulting engineering business. It's a Dutch-based business, but about 30 years ago it launched a digital part of the business, and then that was sort of to develop digital brands and acquire kind of software and data services businesses. And about 5 or 6 years ago now, it acquired a business called Ambiental Risk Analytics, which was the market leader in providing flood risk data, originally to the insurance sector, and then sort of latterly financial services, and now numerous other sectors as well. But yeah, so the part of that acquisition really was to kind of take the flood data that Ambiental had, UK only, and look at kind of expanding that to give it a wider reach, and also look at other perils and other data sets that we could build. So now, a couple of years ago, we launched a global data set. We've got a global flood model that's got a consistent resolution for anywhere in the world. We've also got covering up to 19 different perils. But for the purposes of today, I'll sort of focus on flood. And then, yeah, about 3 years ago, Haskoning Digital was rebranded as Twin. That's a bit of a background. Oh, yeah, it's working. Just a bit of our presence in the market. So Twin, we work with 8 out of the top 10 lenders, including Lloyds, NatWest, and many others. I mentioned there that we featured in their recent sort of climate reports. Obviously, those are publicly available. I've used an example from one of those in one of the next slide. I won't sort of go into all of these points, but I think that the main sort of takeout is that flood is obviously becoming a greater issue in the UK. Last year, I think we saw £2.4 billion worth of damages caused by flood, which is significantly higher than the annual average of 1.3 billion. And I think the trend, there's a projection of it increasing about 35% in the next 25 years. So sort of getting a forward-looking view really on what the risk to your current portfolio is and how that's going to change in the future is becoming more important. And yeah, here's just a snippet really from that climate report that I mentioned from Lloyds. So what they were sort of doing here was looking at using our data to look at a portfolio of 2 million properties and kind of say, taking the higher band risk properties within each region to understand sort of what that looks like today and how that's likely to change in the future. And I think there's a couple of takeouts here, which is obviously one, the risk is set to increase. So the number of properties entering a higher band of risk is going to increase over time. But also it's sort of a national problem. So it's not just sort of restricted to a certain region or so. Climate change is having an impact across all regions that they operate. Yeah, and so again, I guess that sort of just highlights the point from a planning perspective and sort of a strategic angle, getting a view on kind of how the risk is likely to change and in which region is going to be key. And I sort of flagged a couple of products here. So we've got Flood Map Climate and Flood Score Climate. So we do have a Flood Map, which is present day, and Flood Score, which is present day. And then, several years ago, we developed the climate version. And all our data sets start with a map. And then from the map, we take the depths at a property level. And from there, convert that to an average annual loss, which is then converted to a 0 to 100 risk score. And the climate data sets, we have the data goes up to 2100. And yeah, I'll sort of just in this slide covers, these are sort of the key product features. So all our data is 5-meter resolution. Important next UK-wide coverage, so it takes into account England, Wales and Scotland. We have data for those regions all at a consistent level. It's annually updated. So anytime there's any enhancements to any of the input data, we implement that on the model, and that's relayed in our annual updates. Takes into account different climate scenarios. So it's got 20, 30, 50, 80. We can also do 5-yearly increments as well. A couple of clients have requested that. We cover the key RCP scenarios, so 2.6, 4.5, 6, 8.5, 6 return periods. And we've got dynamic flood defence modelling. So we provide a couple of views where flood defences are in place, so you can get a score based on the depths with flood defences and based on the depths without flood defences. And we've got, obviously, we provide property level risk scoring. So, and I guess uniquely that takes into account average annual loss and average damage ratios as standard. So when you take the flood score product, that comes with it. And yeah, again, I won't sort of dwell too much on this, but I just it's a short snippet really of what kind of, so you've got the map data, and then this is kind of the underlying data, and we've just taken out the tidal element particularly. But obviously you'd have this for pluvial, fluvial, tidal. We cover all 3 flood sources. In the top chart shows we record the depth in flooding, obviously for present day and future years. Then that depth is then converted to average annual loss score. Then that's converted into a risk rating score out of 100. So then there's a consistent measurement, 0 to 100 scoring, risk rating scoring. And just on the methodology below, we take the highest of a pluvial, fluvial, and then add tidal to get a combined score. So what you might want to do if you're looking at a portfolio of assets is take the combined score for that group and kind of assess the risk level there. And then obviously you can look at the underlying data and understand what the individual scores are. And this is, just an example of how for the scores can be a really beneficial angle of sort of analysing a large portfolio. So this is looking at the percentage in this example of those assets and kind of what percentage is zero risk present day, what percentage is at high risk, and how that's likely to sort of change in the future under different RCP scenarios and at different time points. So obviously we've selected 2 different time points here, but you can sort of very quickly get an understanding of what percentage of your portfolio is at risk, and again address that and have a look at how that's likely to change in the future to sort of assist with future planning. Yeah, I'll sort of skip through these, a bit conscious of time. So this is just a visualization really of the map. So you can kind of see, how that sort of is reflected and sort of how, from a visual point of view, you can understand how the flooding develops if you're focusing on a specific property. So in this example, the blue squares are kind of represented by a 5-meter grid, and then they've got the shade of color is the depth. But you can just sort of see as you skip along, and in this example, we're taking a high emission scenario. You go to 2050, you can kind of see that the depth of flooding, if flooding gets deeper, and obviously sort of the impact in that, not just that property, the surrounding area increases. So it's gone from probably what was previously a moderate risk to high risk, and then obviously in 2080 it goes to a very high risk property, and you can also understand the effect that's got around it. And that's obviously typically the case if you started off with a property that's maybe moderate risk now, you project it forward, it's likely to become higher risk in the future. And then this is just another look at, so if you're looking at a slightly wider area, overlaying the different time periods, so you can kind of understand what the flooding looks like present day within this specific area in the orange, and then in the purple, sort of what it might become in 2050, kind of the extent, the depth of that flooding, and then how that increases further still by 2080. So you can look at it at the property level, and you can obviously look at it at a wider region. Yeah, and then very quickly, as I said, we cover up to 90 different perils, but I think the two that I just flagged really would be that normally accompany flood with our clients are subsidence, coastal erosion. And again, those data sets have a 0 to 100 risk rating. So again, you can do the similar sort of analysis on that. Yeah, well, let me skip now. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. I think just to flag. So I think Ian said at the top that the sample data available. So speak to ODC about that. Obviously, they've got product summaries. If there's any other, if you want more flood information about flood data or more information about any of the other data sets, then happy to provide that, and via ODC and set up a conversation. But yeah, thanks very much. Tried to skip through that, Ian.
Yeah, brilliant. I appreciate that. Thank you. That's good. Yeah, have I got a control back? Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, so so some really good examples of how you can use the kind of the flooding data to kind of identify properties that might be at risk in either future or kind of now, which is great. So just a single slide again. So we've got loads of housing associations we're having conversation with that are looking at using the flooding data to better understand the risk to the properties, and you can see why after Mark's presented. Again, the managed service team can perform a spatial analysis, so we can easily identify the properties that are at risk, as well as providing a spreadsheet that shows not only current day risk but also future risk as well. And this data allows you to be proactive in understanding and mitigating the risk to your assets and land from flooding. So by identifying at-risk properties in advance, that you can plan necessary precautions to protect your investments and ensure resident safety as well. Okay, so again, if you've got any questions for Mark, please put them in the chat. I'm conscious of time, so I'm just I've got like maybe 3 or 4 slides before maybe we can have a couple of questions, and then we'll finish it. So I suppose the key benefits of the detailed data. So it's been great to hear from all of the data providers on the call, providing lots of information, different information that can be used to assess your assets and land better. The main point that I'm getting at today is that from what we've seen is that you've providers that we've talked to allows you to use their data to gain deeper insights into your communities through the use of their data. That might be related to your neighbourhoods, or as we keep saying, it could actually relate back to your individual assets. So the information provided enables your organisation to make more informed, data-driven decisions, whether it's looking at areas of disposal or existing stock areas or areas of new development. So it can have you can use it to have a positive impact on residents' well-being, identify areas that can be prioritised or require energy efficiency upgrades. It also ensures asset longevity and operational efficiency by improving the accuracy of the data that your organisation and external stakeholders have got access to as well. So finally, using the data to make more informed decisions allows organisations to be more transparent with the stakeholders, including residents, by showing how decisions are made backed by clear evidence, building trust and ensuring that everyone is working from the same information. So just a quick slide on next steps. So now that you've sat through the presentations, you're probably thinking, what are the next steps? So I've already mentioned that we, as partners, we've got access to all of the 4 providers' data. So if you want some of the sample data, if you want to look at how you can use it, then feel free to let us know, your account manager. It's also going to be an opportunity on the questionnaire that we send. So if you are interested, but you're not a managed service client or you don't know who to talk to, then feel free to respond on the questionnaire. We've got a handful of case studies that we can send that all relate to kind of data analysis and kind of what we've done to make data more valuable and provide insights. The managed service team can help with anything that you've got going forward. So if you do already invest in any of the data, if you're lucky enough to be one of those organisations, then the managed service team can help you get the most out of it based on what we've seen today from the partners. And then also we've got, on the back of a conference that we held back in April, we can provide links to a range of conference recordings where speakers were talking about their use of data as well as the GIS systems to make more informed decisions. And again, we'd be happy to provide these recordings for anybody that is interested. Okay, so I'm just gonna see if there are any questions because I've not had control. I've not been able to see anything. So let's just scroll down. So I've just with there's 3 questions. So if we can just ask, if we can go through the 3 questions. Luckily not for me. So I'm sorry to drop anybody in it, but if you'd like to and get back to anybody, let me know and I can take them away. So the first question is for Ordnance Survey. So for the building information, building age, roof aspect, shape, etc. What is the data source? Is it from the EPC register?
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Ian, and thank you very much, Billy, for the question. It's an absolutely brilliant one. So the answer is that some of the data comes from EPC. However, there are multiple other sources of data that are used in creating the building's data. So we've got our surveyors on the ground. Of course, capture sort of the chordal geometry, for example. We've got aerial photography, which of course plays a role in that as well. And we also use for some of the attribution, including building age, construction material, and basin presence. We use one of our partners called Verisk, and they provide quite a lot of data as well. And some of that is modelled, but we do state the provenance of that data and where is that sort of third-party provenance. So that could be from things like EPCs, Historic England. There might be some HMLR source in there, local authority data, and a range of data in that respect. When it comes to the roof data, so that's things like the roof materials, solar panels, green roofs, roof shape and aspect, that predominantly comes from our imagery. And then there's basically an automatic feature extraction algorithm that's then on that. And there are some various other processes as part of that as well when it comes to those. But some of that is essentially modeled, and we do have confidence indicators and scoping sort of on that as well. So there's the number of different processes that come into that. For building height, that's again, imagery plays an important role. And then for the number of floors data, that does include some EPC as well as OS observed data and model data as well, that use a combination of various different end sources to then support into that. So there's multiple different sources of data. If you'd like to find out more, then the documentation page that I mentioned in my presentation is a great place to start. We have some specific advice on how to make the best use of the building's data within our NGD documentation. Then on our More Than Maps platform, we have a lightning talk that goes through in quite a lot of detail the technical specifics and all the source information, and how you can look at things like confidence and the modelling in a bit more detail where that's used in some of the attributes as well. So hopefully that answers the question, Billy, and I'm more than happy to more than happy to take that offline and answer any further questions on that as well with Ian too. So thank you very much. Yeah, thanks, Ian.
Thank you, Robert. And then I think both of these questions are for Steve at Map Impact. So I don't know if you can answer both questions at the same time, but do you take into consideration building characteristics such as glass high rise?
We don't. What we find is that people who want to use this particular sort of data have already got access to those characteristics. In fact, Robert has sort of given a good example actually of where that data is actually provided or can be provided. We work a lot with lenders now and insurers. They obviously use that data already. What they're finding now, though, it is this knowledge about locational susceptibility, because it's the fact that it's an area that gets the heat stress, not a particular building on its own. It's the area that gets the mitigation effect of greening, not an individual property necessarily on its own. And in fact, just out of interest in terms of the EPC ratings, one of the lenders we're talking about is saying it's made them realise that EPCs are a nonsense when it comes to cooling, because it's obviously about heat efficiency in the main. And so they're almost looking for a reassessment in terms of the EPC categories, because they said the current certificates do not cater for cooling. So again, that goes back maybe to policy decisions. In terms of the using infrared mapping, well, again, that's heat loss from the building, which is slightly different to what we're trying to achieve through, heat view, which is actually around locational susceptibility to extreme heat events. There is, I certainly know that there is infrared mapping available in terms of looking and scoring individual properties on that, but that's not our bag, so to speak.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Steve. That's great. That's the last of the questions, which is good. And then I suppose the last thing is just to say thank you very much. Thank you to the presenters. So thanks to Kate, thanks to Mark, thanks to Robert, thanks to Steve for agreeing to do this and kind of provide kind of that extra insight to the organisations that we've had attend today. My details on the screen. If there is any further questions that we've not answered, or you think of anything later, please ask it through the questionnaire. And as I say, if you want any data samples, or you'd like to know more about any of the products, please let us know, and we'll talk to the relevant partners and let you know. Again, thank you very much for attending. Thank you everybody for presenting. I appreciate it, and I hope to speak to you all soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ian.
All right, thank you.